Today, wheat stocks plunge after a massive run-up, driven in part by some of the same Reddit traders who rode the GameStop wave. Plus, semiconductor chips are the brains inside most of the products that we own, like phones, computers, and cars. But they're in short supply, and the constraints are ricocheting throughout the business world. And finally, exclusive audio chat app Clubhouse has enjoyed runaway popularity in its first year. And now, the big guys like Facebook and Twitter want in on its success. I'm MacKenzie Sigalos, and this is CNBC After Hours. Mixed market today as the S&P and Nasdaq posted modest gains, while the Dow finished lower after hitting a record intraday high earlier this morning. Cannabis stocks took a major hit today, plunging just one day after broad gains across the industry yesterday. Shares of these companies have been on the rise in 2021 on the hopes that Democratic control of Congress and the White House would accelerate federal marijuana legalization. And yesterday saw massive one-day gains as individual traders on the same Reddit forums that fueled the GameStop phenomenon turned their attention to cannabis names. But the trade turned over. Tilray, Aurora, Canopy, Afria, all deep in the red today. Tilray in particular had its worst day in history, dropping 50%. But the stock is still up 25% this week and about 290% year to date. Frank Holland can break down all the dramatic moves in cannabis stocks.
Those cannabis stocks that are of high interest on the Wall Street Bets Reddit page, well, very volatile today. Almost the entire group down, trading lower after phenomenal gains yesterday. The Reddit page is still filled with a lot of cannabis stock chatter and, of course, memes. This one, kind of a meme within a meme with some rickrolling, speaking to the randomness of some investors who are buying into cannabis. Other posts, much more sophisticated. We saw one posted overnight calling Tilray a short squeeze and telling people on the thread how to cash out of it. And then you have extensive diamond hands talk. That's slang for an investor that plans to hold onto a stock for the long haul. If this is a short squeeze play, it's much different than what we saw emerge with GameStop, where the short interest was over 100%. Tilray actually has the highest short interest of this group. Our data team tells us the short interest in cannabis stocks in general is on the decline in recent weeks. What is on the rise is the trading volume on these names. Yesterday, eye-popping numbers at the close for Tilray. The trading taking Sundial from basically a penny stock to one with a $4.5 billion market cap. Cannabis stocks were already trading higher on hopes of legalization, also on forecasts that legal cannabis sales would increase by as much as 40% this year. But when you look at the ETFs, you look at the stocks, it's hard not to imagine that all these gains have not been influenced by what you're seeing on Reddit.
Okay, let's get to our sound check. Here's a roundup of the day's biggest action and what the top newsmakers and business leaders had to say on CNBC's airwaves.
If we see the Johnson & Johnson vaccine approved in the next couple of weeks, that will open up a new channel. And there's, two more vaccines that have good preliminary clinical results that could be coming in the next month or two. And that will be a big deal, having 5 different vaccines.
We think drivers who are putting their lives on the line should get access to the vaccine. So we're representing our drivers that way. And really the focus for us on vaccines is making sure that underserved communities and people who have a hard time getting transportation to get vaccinated are taken care of.
We are all here for diversity, inclusion, equality, and breaking down barriers that have, historically existed in the tech landscape.
There's a lot going on in audio, and that's exactly where we play. As we've seen, and many companies are looking at, they're providing their employees more flexibility. And so that creates a world where more people are moving, setting up shop in different places, and they want to make sure that when they're working from home, they have a really good setup.
Okay, so in its earnings report yesterday, General Motors issued a warning saying that a current macroeconomic trend could slash its 2021 profits by up to $2 billion. Well, they're of course talking about the ongoing shortage in semiconductors. Semiconductor chips are critical components in so many products and gadgets that we own. Laptops, phones, cars, gaming consoles, the list goes on and on. The brains that power all of these semiconductor chips. Semis are also required for smaller tasks like display graphics. And as much of the world transitioned to life, work, and school at home, they bought a ton of new personal tech, all filled with chips. And now the chips themselves are in short supply, and the strain is wreaking havoc on the production schedules of some of the biggest companies in the world. Josh Lipton can explain.
Chips are the big brains powering so much of the technology all around us, from smartphones to PCs, from televisions to cars. But now there aren't enough of those chips. In fact, what we're seeing is the most severe shortage of semiconductors in years. Analysts chalk up the shortage to sharp recovery in key end markets for chips like phones and cars, and no let-up in that work-from-home trend either. That means people are still buying all those PCs. Bottom line, pressure on supply across the board. And there's no easy fix here. Making a semiconductor is complex. Lead times of up to 26 weeks are the norm to produce a finished chip. Companies are feeling the pinch. GM said the shortage could cost it up to $2 billion this year. Meanwhile, Sony says it can't produce enough of those new game consoles, in part citing the same issue. Analysts say the problem highlights the need for more domestic chip manufacturing right here in the U.S. if we want to try and avoid this same problem in the future. In fact, last month, Congress did pass legislation that included federal incentives to do just that as part of the National Defense Authorization Act, but lawmakers still do need to appropriate funding toward those measures.
Okay, time for today's numbers round. Let's kick it off with 174. Best Buy has notified store workers that it will cut some jobs and reduce hours, according to a report in the Wall Street Journal. The move from the big box retailer comes after major sales growth in recent quarters, but here's the thing. The bulk of that came from e-commerce, not from its stores where the retail associates work. In its last quarterly report, Best Buy said its online sales grew a staggering 174% year over year. Next, 10,000. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo spent more than $10,000 of taxpayer money on fancy pens that he handed out at dinner parties that he hosted for powerful guests, including Republican donors, CEOs, and conservative media figures, according to a new report from the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. The pens were engraved to commemorate the events, and he doled out about 400 of them, each costing $26 apiece. What's more, the pens were made in China, and the report notes that while Secretary Pompeo was using taxpayer dollars to fund these dinner parties and pen purchases, he was publicly scolding China for, quote, trade abuses that cost Americans jobs. And finally, $1 billion. Big tech firms like Facebook and Twitter are diving into the audio space following the success of Clubhouse, a buzzy audio-only social app that has gained a devoted following from powerful users across the tech, business, and entertainment landscape. Clubhouse has absolutely exploded since its founding last year, and just this past month, the company raised fresh funding at a whopping $1 billion valuation. It's not even a year old. Well, now Twitter is experimenting with a new product called Spaces, where users can hop into a live conversation with each other. And the New York Times reported yesterday that Facebook is developing its own audio chat offering in an attempt to replicate Clubhouse's success. This is likely just the beginning of quote-unquote social audio. Follow the story by going to CNBC.com and downloading the CNBC app. That's it for After Hours. We'll be back here in our home office every Tuesday and Thursday, so be sure to catch us then.